Hi guys, it's Steve for CollectorMania. I'm here continuing our series of 32 decks. This is my Mono Blue deck, Talrand the Sky Summoner. For those of you who don't know, because you can't read the card because I altered it, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, this guy makes a 2/2 flying drake for you. Pretty good, especially for defending yourself and making some little attackers. This deck has a lot of instants and sorceries in it, like, pretty much all Talrand decks should. But here, let's get into it. As you'll see in a lot of my videos, I tend to use a lot of Pokemon tokens, or cards as tokens. I just think they look really cool, especially, they're pretty on point here. Dragon Knights for Drakes, perfect. I've got a Starmie token. This is for my wizards and artifact constructs. You'll see some other token producers later on in the deck. Energy counter that I threw in here. I did put the Dynavolt Tower in here. I found that it actually is pretty useful. You can usually, especially with some of the Planeswalker, Teferis in here, untap it, deal 6 points of damage sometimes to somebody. That's a pretty good chunk of life, actually. Moving into Planeswalkers here, we've got Jace, Architect of Thought. -2 is amazing. Little tiny Factor Fiction that, for the most part, is reusable. A lot of people won't actually try and get rid of this guy because they don't really see him as a walker that you're trying to ultimate most of the time. -8, it's hard to get to, and yeah, he sticks around, surprisingly. Tezzeret the Seeker. I use this guy mainly to go grab Proteus Staff. You'll see why that is in a second. The creatures in here are pretty big, but anyway, you can also grab a few other small utility artifacts with him. His +1's pretty useful too, especially if you run into situations where you're not finding any lands but you have some rocks. You can make a little bit more, or a little bit extra mana. We've got Teferi, Temporal Archmage. -1 is amazing, and tapping 4 permanents, even if it's just 4 lands, is great. +1 is pretty good. Being able to look at 2 cards, put one on the bottom, put one in your hand is great. Never really get to the -10. Don't really need it in this deck. Then we've got Jace's Vryn's Prodigy, a new addition to the deck. It's pretty cool card. I just actually picked it up. It was expensive for a really long time until it rotated finally. And with the whole being awesome and standard and being used in other formats too, it's definitely kept its price tag, but finally I was able to get a copy at a reasonable rate. We've got Baral, Chief of Compliance. Great. I've been testing him a lot in my red-blue deck. It's another Spellslinger deck that I have, and I'm excited to play him in this deck. Just kind of got this copy for this recently. We've got Snapcaster Mage, card that works amazing in pretty much anything that's filled with instants and sorceries. This card, I remember I had a full playset at one point, way back when I still played Standard and Innistrad. I think I only have like 2 or 3 copies of the card left, which is almost a playset, but I definitely regret trading away the ones that I did. Burnished Heart, just good mana, ramp, especially for these colors that don't really have a whole lot of ways to get lands. We've got Phyrexian Metamorph. Usually use this guy to copy one of my mana doublers or even a Psychosis Crawler. Sometimes just snag some really good value creatures that people have in play. Really useful. You got Archaeomancer. Great card for grabbing those instants and sorceries back from the graveyard. As you'll see in a little while, there's a ton of them. Got Clever Impersonator, just great all-around clone. Probably the best clone in my opinion at this point. Being able to copy anything. I've definitely copied quite a few crazy things, like let's see, Parallel Lives has been great. Doubling Season, of course. Other Planeswalkers, really cool card. We've got Solemn Simulacrum. Pretty much a commander staple, as many of you know. Just being able to grab a land and when he dies, draws you a card. Just a good card. Okay, Psychosis Crawler. This is definitely a win condition in the deck. Yeah, you can win through Drakes and combat damage with some of the other creatures that we'll get to, but Psychosis Crawler is definitely your main win condition, something that you want to see. Azami draws you a ton of cards. most of the creatures in this deck are wizards, which kind of makes sense in Mono Blue. Another kind of key thing on here is the amount of blue devotion that she has, she carries with her. There is a Nykthos in here, and she definitely has been instrumental in keeping that card in here. Dose into Perfection, another flip card. This guy's great for making little wizards that you can block with in the beginning, and then if he ever flips, which usually happens because people sometimes don't even realize what he does, you know, all those wizards becoming, you know, getting +2/+1 and flying is great. So yeah, awesome card. Mole Drifter, blue staple, you know, pretty much I put this in anywhere I can. Drawing 2 cards when you need it, and then also having a body when you also need it. Plus, a flickerable card draw is amazing. We've got Arcanus, just an awesome wizard. Tap, draw 3 cards. Also can pay 4 to return him to your hand. That way he dodges a lot of removal if you have open mana. Works great with Teferi as well. Consecrated Sphinx, this card, obviously, amazing. There's very few people that have let this stick around. Most people know to get rid of it as soon as they see it, which, you know, makes sense. It's got a lot of power associated with it, and a lot of people know about it. Memnarch, this is a late game kind of win condition. Another way just to kind of like eke out a win if you have those mana dullers out once again, or, you know, if your drakes aren't doing it and your Psychosis Crawler's been exiled, just to kind of, you know, back up. Stormtide Leviathan, this is one of those things that I really want to see with Proteus Staff. You know, Proteus Staffing a Drake and then revealing a Stormtide Leviathan is great. And same thing here with Inkwell Leviathan. I've definitely won quite a few games with this guy. You know, if it's down to you and one other opponent and, you know, you've got this guy out, you've got a pretty good chance of winning. Getting to the artifacts here. I've got a Soul Ring, some mana, you know, just good EDH staple, really. Wayfarer's Bauble, this is a card that I actually try and advocate for whenever anybody starts talking about, like, non-green mana bases. You know, this card can get you out of a lot of situations, especially, like, I have it in my Mardu deck, and it helps a lot there. Just being able to grab whatever color you need, whatever basic you need. Stranic Resonator, there's a lot of triggered abilities that I like to copy in here. Mainly, you know, it just kind of sticks around and makes extra drakes every once in a while, but there's definitely, you know, an argument to be made for like Snapcaster, Chaomancer, and stuff like that. Just awesome card. Oop. Messing up our piles here. We've got a Mind Stone, a little bit of early mana ramp, and then late game card draw. I love these kind of dual purpose cards. You'll see a few of them. We've got a Stealth Suit. This is kind of my supplement for boots in here. It tends to work really, really well, especially being able to bounce it around, you know, at instant speed. Then we've got Thought Vessel. As I said earlier, Tezzeret grabs a few utility artifacts, and this is definitely one of them. Having no maximum hand size is really important in this deck because you draw a lot of cards. Also, you know, just early ramp is great too. Dynavolt Tower, we talked about this earlier with the energy token. This card has definitely proven its worth. I was skeptical at first, but it's definitely shined a little bit since I've put it in here. And I think, you know, some of the cool things I've done is I killed one opponent with it. He was at 7 life, and I just untapped this, shot him for 3, and untapped, or tapped it, shot him for 3, untapped with Teferi, shot him for 3 again, and then next turn I just, you know, had him down to 1, so just could kill him with a Drake. Extraplanar Lens, you'll see that I have snow-covered basics in this deck, and this is the reason, essentially. Being able to double your mana is kind of important in this deck, too. It's almost akin to having your Psychosis Crawler in a lot of ways, just having all the manas. Proteus Staff, this is kind of the meat of the creature side of this deck. I really, really like, you know, just, like I said, putting those dragons, you know, Proteus Staffing them, and then, you know, flipping into Memnarch or Stormtide Leviathan or pretty much any of those guys. I don't care. Baral, Chief, it doesn't matter. Any of those guys is a little bit more valuable than a 2/2 Flying Drake. And then we've got Commander Sphere, another one of those kind of early game ramp but late game card draw, especially since it's free. That's important. Just being able to sack it just whenever you want. Hedron Archive, another kind of early game ramp, late game card drawing 2 cards. I love this card actually. I've recently gotten into a few foils of it, and I'm kind of slowly putting them in my decks. This deck might be getting one here soon. Staffman, card draw and a little bit of damage. Awesome. Cage Sun, mana doubler. Rhystic Study, the bane of many people's existence, really. It definitely is quite an annoying card. I play it in pretty much wherever I can. I think I only have like 4 or 5 copies of it, but you know, that's definitely enough. I think my opponents thank me for not having one in every deck that I could run it in. Leyline, giving everything instants, pretty important. Metallurgic Summonings. This card's great for making little or big tokens. It also has that nice kind of second effect where you can exile it and return all your instants and sorceries from your graveyard to your hand. Awesome card. Really like it. Blue Sun Zenith, you know, card draw. Also reusable. Shuffles back into your library. Pack Negation. Basically a free counterspell until your next turn. Works great. A lot of people don't see it coming. Mystical Tutor. Basically be able to find anything that you need to when you need to. A few destroy effects like Pognify and Rapid Hybridization. Then we've got Muddle and Mixture. The main thing here is that it, you know, can transmute for Cyclonic Rift and a few other things. I've been in funny situations where I've had to transmute for a negate just so I can counter, like, I don't know, when I know somebody has something big in their hand, like a huge enchantment. Cyclonic Rift, just overall amazing card. This is pretty oppressive to your opponents. And you know, for that reason, I think pretty much anybody that can run it runs it, and there's a reason for that. Counterspell, you know, 2 blue, counter target spell, just great. Reality Shift, a lot of people don't see this card coming. A lot of people don't play with this card for some reason, but being able to exile Avacins and Ulamogs and stuff that, you know, you couldn't normally be able to get rid of. You know, all you could really do with that kind of stuff before is bounce it, but being able to just get rid of it is great. And 90% of the time, the card that gets morphed isn't anything important. It's usually a land or a spell or an enchantment or whatever. We've got Negate, just a good counterspell for, you know, like I said, big enchantments, artifacts, instant sorceries, basically anything that's non-creature. Capsize. I've definitely been on the other side of Capsize Lock, and I've done the Capsize Lock. It's a pretty devious trick in blue. You know, just get a couple of those mana doublers, and then your Capsize basically just wins you the game. Dissolve. I love this card. I like the artwork. Yeah, there are a lot of spells I could be running in its place, but I think I got this in a pre-release somewhere, and I have had it in this deck ever since. It's one of the just really cool foils that I've pulled, you know, and I really like it. Plus, Scrywan's nice. Same kind of thing with Dissipate here, except for it's got kind of a little bit more purpose, you know, exiling people's big threats once you counter them. I've definitely gone up against a lot of graveyard recursion decks, and this definitely helps. Aetherize. This is kind of Cyclonic Rift's little brother, or maybe a cousin if you think about it that way, but I've found it to be pretty instrumental in a few of the games that I've won. You can blow somebody out pretty hard with this card, and it definitely does its job. We've got a Rewind. Just pretty good counterspell that, you know, if you have a bunch of spells in your hand that you want to play on the end of somebody's turn, but you want to leave up counterspell mana, this works pretty good, you know. Just counter something and then play what you need to. Cryptic Command, one of the best counterspells in this format, you know, in my opinion. The modal spells are great. You'll hear me say that pretty much throughout the series whenever I come to one, but I really stress the fact, you know, to new players that if you can choose what the card does multiple ways, then you want it in your deck. Psychic Spiral. This is my anti-mill package. It definitely does its job. I've been in a lot of situations where I've won the game just because of this, you know, turning it back on the person that's trying to mill you out. Got Mystic Confluence, once again back to modal spells. This card is great, my favorite Confluence by far. We've got Ancestral Visions. Funny story about this, I happened to pick about 3 or 4 of these up when they were still about $12, and it seemed like the next month they were like $60. It was crazy. I was really, really fortunate, and yeah, I lucked out there. I highly recommend this card. It's really, really good. I don't know if it's $60 good, which I think it's now more like 40 or 50, but still, it's amazing. We got a few cantrips here. I'll just kind of get through them because I know the video is going long. We've got a Preordain, we've got a Ponder, we've got a Serum Visions. Now those cards are just great for, you know, making your little Drake tokens and kind of fixing your draws, and, you know, if you need mana, you can find it that way. Just good cards. Divination, just another card draw spell, you know, pay 3, draw 2, not bad. Which, you know, usually is pay 3, draw 2, get a Drake, so not bad at all. Call to Mind, returning instants to sorcery is pretty important, especially like if you somehow, for some weird reason, need more than one Cyclonic Rift. This is the card for you. And then we've got Pull from the Deep, which is essentially, you know, the same thing but souped up, except for this does exile itself. So got to be kind of, you know, aware of that. But, you know, pulling back instant and sorcery is really, really good, especially if you have a Call in Mind or Call to Mind and a Cyclonic Rift in the graveyard. Get both of them. Sounds great. Rider Replication, this card in this deck is a win condition. You know, you can, well, any deck really, you can really just kind of hose your opponents by getting, you know, a ton of Psychosis Crawlers, or, you know, maybe even their best creature, like their Rune Scarred Demon or their, you know, Avengers Zendikar. But yeah, I advocate for this card a lot. Now we've got Recurring Insight. Great for drawing cards and lots, you know, mass card draw, really. Rebound helps a lot too. We've got our non-basic lands. I'll keep saying unbasic, I don't know why. But we've got Nykthos, really cool land. Definitely taps for a lot of mana in this deck. Blighted Cataract, early, you know, mana, late game card draw once again. Riptide Laboratory, this is instrumental in keeping Talrand, you know, not ridiculously costed sometimes. Being able to bounce him when somebody goes to remove him, because most people are wise to what you're doing as soon as you start, so. Scrying Sheets, Snow-Covered Lands. One of my best friends really uses this card extremely effectively, and I need to learn from him, really. I've tried. It's okay. I've used it a few times, but, you know, when you've got empty or open mana at the end of somebody's turn and you can just use it, it works good, but I have to play around with this a little bit more. Reliquary Tower, you know, unlimited hand size like we talked about earlier is great. Ghost Quarter, being able to hit those Gaia's Cradles or anything that is, you know, affecting you adversely. Really cool. Myriad Landscape, another mana ramp card in blue, so. Same with Temple of False God. They've got Lonely Sandbar. I really, really like cycling. I'm excited that these new cycling cards are coming to this next block, Amonkhet. And really just kind of pumped to see what they do with that, you know. I hope there's some pretty good ones, which there most likely will be. Tolaria West, this I usually transmute for, you know, Reliquary Tower or Shrine of Nykthos. Works great for that. Also, if you need it to be a land, it can be, you know, in a pinch. And then the rest is just snow-covered basics. I know somebody in the comment section was saying that I don't really show my basics. There's not really a whole lot to see here, but, you know, there they are. With that, that's the end of the deck tech. Thanks, guys, for watching and sticking with me here. And also remember to subscribe, watch, you know, our videos, and leave us some comments, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. Just kind of let us know. I know that I fixed the autofocus issue that I had last time with this, so hopefully that has helped your guys' eyes with this video. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.